Good morning, Year 8. Apologies, I'm a bit late getting this video out to you this week. We are on, let's go to our teams. Again, yours might look slightly different to this. Don't worry, it still will function the same online. But we are on week 5 now, on lesson 8 this week. Now, a couple of people last week had done the quiz before they'd done the lesson. Just a reminder that you must do lesson 8 first. Otherwise, well, I don't know how you did the quiz, to be honest, without having done lesson 8, because the quiz was about the lesson. So you need to do the quiz second and the lesson first. So I'm going to go ahead and click on View Assignments. I'm going to go to Student View because that's what it looked like for you. Now, a couple of caveats before you start. A couple of questions in the quiz this week. They are all correct answers. And some of the tasks this week you'll need to complete on paper at home, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and click on our lesson. And again, like I've told you many times before, you've got a couple of options here. First of all, you can print this off and complete it on paper at home, and then upload it onto Teams and submit it that way. If you're not sure how to do that, watch my video that I posted on Teams before, explaining how to take photos and upload those onto Teams. But you are going to need to click Edit Document. And then you can either click Edit in Desktop App if you've got Word and you want to do it on your own version. Again, watch my video. It explains how to upload this onto Teams once you're finished. Or if you don't have Word, click on Edit in Browser. It's then going to move things around, things like that. Don't worry about it too much. It will change back once you're finished. I promise. And you're not going to get marked down for things being in weird places. I am just going to move this down here. Hopefully that will move. No, doesn't want to go. There we go. I just moved that around a little bit for you to make it better. But as always, what you need to do is go off and do the Quizlet tasks, first of all, about Black Tudors and Black Georgians, and then work on the timelines and put the time periods in order and the events in order. Should take you about 10 minutes to do that. Pause the video here, complete the Quizlet tasks now. Okay, so name a Black Tudor that we have studied. You could have spoken about John Blank or Mary Phyllis or Diego, and you need to describe their story. If you don't know who I'm talking about, well, you've clearly missed a lesson, so go back and do it. Name a Black Georgian that we have studied, where you could have talked about Bill Richmond. You could have spoken about Francis Barber, Dido Elizabeth Bell, and described their story. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've clearly missed a lesson, so go back and do it because you're behind. Right, time periods in order then. The earliest on here is Iron Age Britain. Actually goes off our timeline, starts before 500 BC, but up to in Britain until about 40 AD, and then the Romans from 40 AD until 440 AD. Now, there is an extra layer of complication here, if we're being technical and exact about this, year 8, because technically Britain is still in the Iron Age when the Romans are there. That's still the Iron Age, technically speaking. But just to make it easier for you, it's sometimes helpful just to say the Iron Age ends in England about 40 AD when the Romans arrive, and the Roman age then begins and ends in 440 AD. Okay? After the Romans, you should have Anglo-Saxon England from 440 AD until 1066 AD. Medieval England then comes next from 1066 until 1485, the Battle of Bosworth. And then if we're putting those events in order, well, the earliest on there is the Battle of Hastings, in 1066. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So Columbus discovers the Americas in 1492. 1577 to 1580, Francis Drake sails around the world, or circumnavigates the world, if you want a sophisticated level word. And in 1600, Elizabeth I gave the East India Company a royal charter to go and trade goods in India. So that's the order you should have. Okay, now we've been talking a lot over the last few weeks about migration, of course, but in particular about a series of claims made by Enoch Powell. And the last 2 weeks, you've been looking at his second claim, that the English can revert or return to being the people we were before the ships of Elizabethan and Stuart England set off to forge the first British Empire. There's a typo there, I've just noticed. British Empire in the Americas. So Enoch Powell's claim then in the 1960s was that Britain could return to what it was like before the empire. And I think really that he had a particular view of what Britain looked like before the empire. Select the image, you've done this lots of times now, which best shows what Enoch Powell believed pre-colonial, before the empire, England was like. I'll give you 30 seconds to write number 1 or 2. Of course, as you can see there, I've typed that. It is number 1. His view was that Britain was not multicultural, was not a place that had undergone migration of peoples from many different ethnic backgrounds or cultures before the empire. So you should have typed number 1. And as it says, last lesson we uncovered evidence that suggested the Dark Ages in England before the empire, of course, wasn't what Enoch Powell thought it was like. Now this means we need to go even further back in time to find out what Roman Britain was like and see, well, is it what Enoch Powell thinks? Is it a non-multicultural, non-ethnically diverse place? Because if you think about it, year 8, we've gone further and further and further and further and further back in time and found that, sorry, Enoch, but that wasn't really the case. Certainly, Georgian Britain was multicultural. Hey, Enoch Powell knew that. It was after the empire. Tudor Britain, the time the empire's developing, is quite a multicultural place. It's certainly an ethnically diverse place, as Dr. Miranda Kaufman's evidence around Black Tudors showed. The medieval ages may be less ethnically diverse, but certainly it was culturally diverse. There were lots of migrants from Italy, from France, from Germany in particular, who were living in medieval England. And the Dark Ages, again, maybe not that ethnically diverse, but certainly there are migrant communities, the Vikings, and of course the Anglo-Saxons. So we've got to go further back in time. What's it like in Roman England, Roman Britain? Is this Enoch Powell's vision of white, let's be frank, non-multicultural, non-ethnically diverse Britain? We'll find out. But disclaimer, but I think we'll probably find that Enoch's wrong again. The first person that we are going to look at is this, the Ivory Bangle Lady. Her skeleton was found by archaeologists in Sycamore Terrace in York in 1901. So well over 100 years ago, well before Enoch Powell was talking in the 1960s. Testing proved that she lived in York in roughly 380 AD. So the tail end of Roman Britain. They're leaving in around 400, 440 AD. Recently, a new scientific technique called radioisotope analysis, that means the bones are tested. If you want to see this in action, if you go and look on BBC iPlayer and search Digging for Britain, it's an archaeology program where they often use that. Or you could go onto 4OD and search Time Team, personal favourite program of mine. I had a poster of Time Team Tony Adams on my wall when I was a kid. I was a strange child. But they use those sorts of techniques a lot. I'll start again. I went off on a tangent. Recently, a new scientific technique called radioisotope analysis, where the bones are tested, have proved that either she or her family were immigrants to Britain. Forensic science has also meant that we've been able to reconstruct her face, and we can stare into the eyes of the ivory bangle lady. And I've given you a picture of that scientifically reconstructed face above. There's something interesting about her complexion particularly that I'd like you to analyse and take note of. However, historians and archaeologists have suspected since 1984 that the ivory bangle lady was an immigrant, and they worked this out by studying clues in her grave goods, items a skeleton is buried with. So what this tells us is that we know today that she definitely was an immigrant because of our new scientific techniques that have helped us do that. But archaeologists had kind of already worked that out before by looking at what she was buried with, her grave goods. And first of all, before we actually look at what this scientific evidence has showed us about where she was from, you're going to act like real archaeologists and do what they did in the 1980s to help work out where this lady was actually from. So I've given you over the next 2 pages some of the goods that were found in her grave, some pictures of them and some information about them. I need you to analyse, that means look closely at and ask questions about these different grave goods and try and work out A, whether the ivory bangle lady was rich or poor, and B, where the ivory bangle lady or her family might have come from originally. Where did they migrate from? Once you've done that and you've made your conclusions based on the archaeological evidence, I need you to record that here. So you might say, I think the ivory bangle lady was rich. My evidence for this is, while she was buried with lots of expensive looking jewellery, like the silver locket necklace, the glass beads and glass earrings. You're then in question B going to use a similar structure to explain where you think she was from. And I've given you a map there of continents so you can name what continent you think she was from. Okay? Should take you at least 10 minutes. Pause the video here and do that now. Okay, so hopefully you've been able to conclude that she probably was a rich person and her grave goods definitely show her that, but you should have listed some evidence and there's certainly more than the evidence I gave you about these bits of jewellery. You could have spoken about her sarcophagus, the glass mirror, the bangles and things. So I would like you to record a couple of pieces of evidence, not just one. Excuse me, pause the video again and do that now if you haven't done that. And hopefully you've given some kind of guess as to where you think she was from. Now, I'm not going to give you the answer yet because we're going to find that out in a second. On the next page is some reading that you need to do. Pause the video here. Read should take you about 5 minutes now. Okay, there are some tricky words and ideas here, so I am going to read this to you. Archaeologists have discovered that the ivory bangle lady or her ancestors were indeed from Africa. More specifically, it has been proved that the ivory bangle lady or her ancestors were from sub-Saharan Africa, from a country below the Sahara Desert. Now you can see that in this map here, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, below the Saharan Desert, that green part. That might sound insignificant, but this is hugely exciting for historians and archaeologists. Even if we look at Tudor Britain, a lot of the migrants like John Blanc and things were people from North Africa. They're called the Moors. It's hugely exciting and interesting that somebody has migrated from sub-Saharan Africa, somewhere below the Saharan desert, because that's quite rare and unique and exciting for historians who are studying migration. Along with the ivory Bangor lady, archaeologists found roughly 200 Roman skeletons buried near Sycamore Terrace in York. Radioisotope analysis, another one of those scientific methods, has proved that 12% of the skeletons found were immigrants from Africa, and most of these were from North Africa. But that's still a not insignificant number of people migrating in Roman Britain from North Africa. More evidence of African migrants to Roman Britain was found in 1934 in a village called Beaumont in Cumbria, and it's coloured in red here on the map, the county of Cumbria in the northwest of England. A stone was found underneath an old cottage that was being demolished, knocked down. There was an inscription writing on the stone in Latin, which was the language spoken and written by the Romans. It said that a unit, a small army of Aurelian Moors, had been based at the nearby Roman fortress of Abalava. The Aurelian Moors were a group of soldiers from North Africa, probably Libya or Tunisia or Algeria, these countries in this sort of area of central North Africa. 2 Roman emperors were named on the stone, Valerian and Gallienus, or Gallienus even. This evidence means we can work out the rough date the stone was made, somewhere between 253 and 258 AD. So we're going back even earlier here than the ivory Bangor lady. This means that Africans were definitely living in Britain at that time. The fortress at Abalava was part of Hadrian's Wall, a 6-metre high wall that stretched 84 miles across the border between England and Scotland. There was a fortress every mile along the wall. They were called mile forts. Most historians believe that the soldiers who manned the fortresses were mostly from North Africa or the Middle East, countries such as Syria, Iraq, or Iran. There is also evidence of immigrants from modern-day France, Italy, Spain, and other European nations living in Roman Britain. It was a very diverse place. So when we think of Roman Britain, we have to think of a place that's almost like a melting pot of cultures. People from Africa, people from all sorts of parts of Asia, maybe even parts of Eurasia. So we're talking about the kind of beginnings of Russia, Scythia or Scythians, perhaps. It's a diverse place, but everyone has been brought together by the Roman Empire, which, as you'll see, stretched over a huge area, everything coloured in pink on this map. As it says, this isn't really a surprise. Rome, in modern Italy, controlled a huge empire in Europe, Africa, and Asia. So fascinating. Now, you've got a choice next. You can either answer the questions 1 to 11 here on the next page, which I'll go through shortly, or you can move on to task B. I've given you another extract from David Olusoga's wonderful book, Black and British, and you need to read it and answer the questions. Now, you will need to do this task on paper, unfortunately, because as you know, these things don't work on Microsoft Teams, but you can still access it. So if you're doing task B, pause the video here and go off and do that now. If you're doing task A, then pause the video here. It should take you about 10 minutes tops to do it properly. Pause the video here, complete that task now. Okay, so what part of Africa was the ivory bangle lady from? 1 or 2? Well, she was from 2. She was from sub-Saharan Africa. What percentage of the 200 skeletons found in York were immigrants from Africa? It was 12%. And you should then go off and do the challenge task and convert that into a number of the 200. I'm not going to give you the answer for that. I want you to do it yourself. What city in the north of England were the ivory bangle lady and the other 200 skeletons found? It was York. So number 3. Where in the north of England was the stone with Latin inscribed? It was 1. Beaumont in Cumbria. What was the unit of soldiers based at the Roman fortress of Abalava called? It was 2. The Aurelian Moors. Where were the soldiers from originally? Well, you need to try and name 3 places. So you could say North Africa. You could say Syria. You could say Iraq or Iran, for example. We're going to ignore that. When was the stone made? Well, it was made, I'm just going to double check, but it's in 250s AD. It was made between 253 and 258 BC. No, it wasn't. AD. How many miles long is Hadrian's Wall? It is 384 miles. What 2 countries does it separate? England and Scotland. Or if you want to be technical, at the time it was Britannia and Scotland. Or in fact, that's not even true. It was Britannia and Caledonia. Where else did people migrate to Roman Britain from? Well, you could have said France. You could have said Italy. I'd also accept Germany here, or Germania, as it was called then. Spain as well. Why might this evidence prove Enoch Powell is wrong? Well, it's telling us that people of many diverse cultures and many different places, some different ethnicities too, were living in Roman Britain. So it's not really what Enoch Powell sees for his vision of white pre-Empire Britain. So that means we can move on to the last task. And again, you're going to reread the claim and decide which of these pictures fits best. We've gone through this lots of times, so I'm not going to spend lots of time on this. You're going to list evidence from today which might go against Enoch Powell. So like we've just said, due to the ivory bangle lady, due to what was found in Beaumont, we know, and the Aurelian Moors, we know that Roman Britain was a culturally and ethnically diverse place. How far do you agree with Enoch Powell's second claim? Well, you're going to write a number to show how far you agree. You're going to select a word from this table to match the number, and then you're going to type underneath why you selected that number, and you must use your word in your explanation as to why you picked that number. Now, a final challenge task. If you'd like to, you can also move on and think about Enoch Powell's third claim, because he did make 3 claims, you'll remember in our first lesson, and we need to decide whether he's met those or not. So you're going to do exactly the same task as you did before, but this time about his third claim, as you can see there. So it's exactly the same as above, just with his third claim. Sorry, my laptop I thought was going to die, so I was scrambling a bit there. But whatever you're doing, whether you're just doing one or both, you need to pause the video here, and it should take you about 10 minutes to do those tasks. So that's it for this week. Now, I really do hope that so far you're starting to get a picture of how Enoch Powell's claims in the 1960s were somewhat not backed up by the historical evidence that exists, and therefore seeing why history is so important. Because we can check the claims that are made by people to ensure that they're actually correct. And in that way, we can make informed decisions about our own political beliefs or how we interpret or view history. Indeed, how we interpret or view our world today. Now, that's the last lesson we're going to do about Enoch Powell, a figure from the 1960s. Next lesson, controversially, I think excitingly, we're going to unpick a claim made by Nigel Farage more recently about migration into East London, or really into London in general, our home. I can't wait to get started on it next week, or really after half term. Thanks, Year 8.